What's up, guys? Brent here with ElectricBikeReview.com, and today we are going over the AddMotoR HITHOT H1 electric bike. So this thing is a full suspension setup from AddMotoR. It runs for $16.99, but it's pretty sweet. It comes with a fair amount of stuff for the price. We've got suspension in the front, suspension in the back. It's got a pretty large battery. It's got a Bafang 500-watt motor. It's got disc brakes. Got a pretty nice control center up here. All the stuff we'll go over in more detail, but yeah, I mean, this thing, it's a pretty good value buy in my opinion. It's been a lot of fun riding this. I've kind of put it through its paces, tried to really test out the suspension on this thing. I'll show you guys some footage of that later on, but yeah, so let's dive into the AddMotoR HITHOT H1 electric bike right here. So up here on the front of the bike, we've got the half grip twist throttle. So this thing is it's got pedal assist, and it also has a throttle up here. So one thing I just want to mention real quick about this throttle right off the bat is we'll go ahead and turn this thing on. And to turn this bike on, there's a two-step sequence. You have to push the power button on right here, which is already on, and you can tell because it's got a little blue light inside. And then you got to hold down the power button on the button pad here on the left, and then the control center turns on. So every time you turn this bike on, it's going to start off in pedal assist level 1, no matter what pedal assist level you leave it in. So like let's say we turn it all the way up to 5 here, turn it off, and then we want to turn it back on. It's going to start in pedal assist level 1. So back to the throttle, what that means is whenever the bike is turned on, unless you adjust the settings and turn it to 0 here, the throttle is going to be hot right off the bat. So I'll just go ahead and twist it so you can see, boom, this thing is hot. Now, for me personally, I like it when the throttles are hot without having to pedal, without having to have the bike in motion, because it just makes it easier to get this thing going from a dead stop. If you're at a crosswalk, if you're at like a tricky spot on terrain, maybe a slightly uphill, you're in a higher gear and you're at a dead stop, you know, you can use a throttle right off the gate, right out of the gates, and I really like that. One thing I do want to caution about this though, and I have had it happen to me before, is if you forget that the throttle is hot, it's easy to be kind of chilling with the bike, you know, hanging out, and then and it accidentally gets away from you. So I would just, you know, caution, just be cognizant that this thing is hot whenever the bike is on. And again, the only way to turn that off, to turn off the pedal assist and the throttle, is to manually put this thing in pedal assist level 0 like that. Once you do that, the throttle's dead and the pedal assist doesn't work either. So yeah, now the grips here, these are kind of like just a rubber ergonomic grip. They're not locking, so they can spin around if you put a lot of pressure on them, like you can see like that. Not a big deal, just something to be aware of. Pretty standard brakes and shifter setup here. We got Tektro 4-finger brakes and a Shimano SIS 7-speed shifter up here, which goes down to the Shimano tourney derailleur. Now, what I like about this setup on the HITHOT H1 is it's got this little cage, this little metal cage that kind of comes down right here, and that kind of protects the derailleur if you get a strike on this thing, if you lay the bike over, maybe if a rock comes up. It reduces the chance of something actually striking this part of the component right here. And I think it might also protect this cable a little bit, which is great. The power cable that goes into the motor, you know, these can definitely be susceptible to damage if you're not careful. So I like that they put this little piece right here. You know, small thing, but it does make a difference. And back up here to the front of the bike, we do have motor inhibitors on this bike, which, you know, every time I get to the motor inhibitors, I really like this feature. It's just a safety thing in my opinion. Whenever you hit the brakes, it's going to shut off power to the motor. So, you know, on only pedal assist bikes, that may not be as important, but for bikes that have a throttle like this one, I think the motor inhibitors do make a big difference, because in an emergency situation, if you slam on the brakes, maybe I forget to let off the throttle here, you know, I'm saved by the motor inhibitors, because they're going to shut off the motor and basically ensure that I have the shortest possible stopping distance, which is, you know, obviously what you want. Dig that. We've also got a little bell up here on this side. Also, another kind of just a small detail, but I like the configuration of the bell on this. It's kind of built into the into the brake lever kind of setup right here. I prefer that instead of having it on the handlebars, because in my opinion having bells up here just kind of clutters everything up, so I like that they put that on here. Going down here to the front, we do have a front headlight on this bike. It is attached to the arch here on the front suspension, so it might move around a little bit more as opposed if it were actually attached to the frame. Not a huge deal, but again, just one of those things to be aware of. And it's not, you know, it's not a terribly bright headlight, but it is, I think, enough to, it's enough to let people see you coming. If you do want to actually illuminate your path, it might be a better idea to actually get like an aftermarket headlight, something more powerful you can put up on your handlebars or your helmet or whatever. The suspension here on the HITHOT H1, these are Suntour XCT suspension. It's got about 100 millimeters of travel. And you know, this suspension actually did pretty well, I find, in my opinion. I'm a 200-pound rider, and I mean, I wasn't doing like really intense jumps or anything with this, but I feel like they did pretty well. You can also adjust the preload on this by turning this dial right here clockwise or counterclockwise, and that's going to stiffen or kind of make the shocks more spongy depending on your ride style and your weight. So for me, like again, 200 pounds, I want this pretty stiff. You've also got a lockout right here, so if you don't want the shocks to be active at all, whoop, you just flip that like that, and it's actually going to lock the suspension so it doesn't move at all. You know, me, I don't want to use that, but it's cool that the suspension has it, because maybe if you want to increase your efficiency while riding on flat ground like pavement or something, you could turn these off, make them static, and it might help increase your overall range. Tires here are pretty standard on the HITHOT H1. These are Kenda tires, 27.5 by 2.3 inches wide. I don't believe there's any puncture protection on these tires, so if you're in an area like me where there's just seems to be thorns everywhere, might be a good idea to just grab some goo, throw something in these tires to help protect them, or maybe even replace these tires with something that actually has puncture protection. Court actually did a really cool video recently on the different types of, just all the different types of tires, the different types of puncture protection, all that stuff. I'll link to it in the written portion of this. Might be kind of cool for you guys to check out if you are interested in swapping out these tires at some point later on. Down here on the bottom, we've got 180 millimeter mechanical disc brakes in the front. And in the back, we've got a different size disc brake. Actually, it's 160 millimeters, so it's a little bit smaller. Now, even though they are two different sizes, I like that AddMotor put the larger one on the front and the smaller one in the back. That might seem kind of common sense, but I've actually seen it reversed, where the smaller disc brake is in the front and the larger one is in the back, and that's obviously not what you want, because most of the stopping power comes from the front. Now with mechanical disc brakes, they're not going to be as powerful normally as hydraulic disc brakes, but you know, they're easier to adjust. You know, normally they're easier to adjust. Sometimes this wire that leads down can kind of stretch over time, but it's pretty easy to tighten this thing up, as opposed to hydraulic disc brakes where, you know, you've got a reservoir up here, you might have to bleed the line to kind of adjust stuff, so just more stuff to hassle with. So pros and cons to each basically is what I'm saying. Since we're down here talking about the suspension, I do want to talk about the rear suspension real quick. In the back here, we've got this coil suspension, and this is about 22 millimeters of travel on this bad boy right here. And you know, when I was getting the specs for this, I was like, 22 millimeters of travel, like that's not going to be, I don't think, a whole lot of cushion or support, really not going to do anything. But I was very surprised that, you know, I'll show you guys some video later, some slow-mo shots and stuff, but the suspension actually did pretty good. Now the downside to this setup, the way that this bike is set up with the hub motor in the back here, is you have what's called unsprung weight. And I actually talked with Cord about this. He kind of explained it to me a little bit, but basically the downside is that with this unsprung weight, this weight in the back right here with the hub motor, is that the coil suspension here is going to just have to work harder. It's got more weight bouncing up and down. It's just more stress on it. It might make it less efficient, as opposed to if there was if the weight was entirely sprung, like with a mid-drive motor. So not the worst thing in the world, but just something to kind of be aware of, something to point out. So let's go back to this control center here. So the control center, it looks pretty simple, but I actually really like this control center. It's got a lot of good information on it. It's a backlit control center. We've got I think it's just a 4-bar battery indicator. Now, with a 4-bar battery indicator, that's not going to be as precise as, say, a larger bar indicator, maybe like a 5 or 10. I mean, these are 25% increments here, and obviously it's not going to be as precise as something like a percentage battery indicator, but you know what, it gets the job done. That's fine. And I think up here on the top right hand side it says TM. I don't know if that's an actual clock or if it is a trip timer. I think it's a trip timer, how long I've been riding this bike on a particular trip. On the left hand side here we've got the pedal assist, and again it goes from 0. If you push on the bottom button here on the button pad on the left, cycle up, and you can go all the way up to 5. And again, the throttle is hot, starting from pedal assist level 1 all the way up to 5. In the middle we've got the current miles per hour. On the right here we've got the motor wattage. On the bottom we've got the distance travel, a odometer, and then on the right I'm pretty sure that is the ambient temperature. It's in Celsius right now, so I have no idea what that translates to Fahrenheit. But what's cool is you can hit the power button here in the middle, just tap it instead of holding it, and you'll actually get a fair amount of new information here on the screen. So I'll tap it once and you'll see we got the average speed up here in the middle. Tap it again and it goes to max speed, and then on the bottom here it says VOL, volume. I don't know what that is, but yeah, okay. And then if you tap it again, it goes back to your current miles per hour and your odometer. If you hold up here on the button pad, you'll see that the screen becomes backlit, the little headlight icon comes on, and then the headlight turns on as well. To turn that off, same thing, hold it up, boom, and it turns off. On the bottom here, if you hold this button, you will get the walk mode. So if you do that, I'll just show you real quick. You just hold the bottom button and the bike, oh, it's actually kind of quick, but I mean, the walk mode's like 3 to 5 miles per hour. Kind of a nice little thing if you are going to be actually walking this bike, especially up a hill. You can hold that thing down, and it's just going to make it so that it's not as much work for you to be pushing this thing up a hill if for some reason you are not riding it. And this thing, it only comes in, well, it's got 4 different, it comes in one main color. The main color is black here. So the frame is black, but it's got these accents, these kind of blue accents on the tires, blue accents on the frame. It also comes in green accents, yellow accents, and orange accents. But the main color here is going to be the same throughout. And it's going to be just this black color right here. The battery here in the middle is a relatively large battery, not too bad. It's 48 volt, 10.4 amp hours. To take this thing off, you just grab the key here, give it a twist. Let's go ahead and turn it off before we take it off. And you just pull up on the lever right here. Let's see if we can do it one-handed. I got this. There we go. And it just comes off like that. As you can see, the little handle that you use to get this thing off actually does come in handy. Putting it back on, I found, is not quite as easy to do one-handed. We'll see if we can do it. Oh, I might have to put the camera down. Well, oh, wait. Ah, check that out, one-handed. I'll take it. All right, we'll lock that back up, turn it back on, and that's how the battery works right there. Pedals, pretty standard pedals, just aluminum VP pedals, platform pedals. They're relatively large. I have big feet, so I like it when pedals are nice and big. These aren't as large as I would like them, but for just kind of a stock pedal, they're actually not that bad. They've got little teeth that raise up, give you a good amount of grip. Yeah, and this bike overall weighs 53 pounds. I think it's like 53.6 is what I weighed it as, which is not terrible. It's definitely, you know, it's still heavy for a mountain bike. Of course, it's electric, and on the grand scheme of things for electric mountain bikes, you know, full suspension, 53 pounds is really not too terrible in my opinion. So back down here on the other side, we've got this chain guard / chain guide. So it's this kind of double-sided little plastic piece right here. And this does a great job of keeping the chain kind of locked into place. And I really put this thing through its paces as far as, I mean, I was actually trying to get a derailment on this. I was on some pretty rough terrain and a lot of rocks and kind of small jumps, and I was really just trying to jostle this thing around and see if I could get a derailment. And it did a really good job of keeping it on there. The only thing about this is it is plastic, so it's not going to be like a true bash guard. If you get a rock strike on the bottom, if you hit a log or something, like, you might actually bust this thing up. I mean, maybe not, but it's obviously not going to be as strong as like an aluminum or steel piece. The HITHOT H1 also has a cadence sensor for the pedal assist. There's two main types of pedal assist really. There's cadence sensor and torque sensors. Cadence sensors measure the revolution of the cranks, whereas torque sensors measure the actual pressure or the torque that you're putting on the cranks. That's kind of an oversimplified version, but with cadence sensors, normally what I find is there's a little bit of a delay from the time that you start pedaling to the time that you actually get power coming out of the motor. There's also a delay from the time where I stop pedaling and then the motor shuts off. Not always a huge deal, but sometimes on a bike like this, where it's a mountain bike, if you're going over kind of technical terrain, if you're going really slow, for me, sometimes what will happen is I'll just start pedaling a little bit and this thing will engage, and it kind of, because of that delay from starting and stopping, it can just make navigating technical terrain a little bit difficult, as opposed to a torque sensor, which is just much quicker, much more snappy. Not a huge deal, but it's kind of generally a lower end component compared to a torque sensor. It's more affordable, and since this bike is $16.99, I mean, they do have to make some concessions at some places, and I think that's one of the areas where they did that here. The motor back here on the HITHOT H1 is just the Bafang 500 watt nominal, I think it's about 750 watt peak motor here. And I've tried this motor quite a few times. I really like this one. It's most of these Bafang motors, especially the more efficient ones like this, they are really quiet. They're not super atrocious as far as noise levels go. A lot of times, if you're in a low pedal assist level, like it's almost just like ghostly quiet. You can barely hear this thing running. 500 watts is, it's a fair amount of power. It does a good job of getting you where you need to go, especially on off-road portions. And kind of Court was explaining this to me, putting it into perspective, because I was like, 500 watts, 350 watts, not that powerful, but like a average Olympic athlete, their power output is about 250 watts. So, 500 watts is like having 2 Olympic athletes helping you on your bike ride. So that's pretty cool. Overall, I dig this bike. It also does come with this little rear light right here. So to turn it on, I think you just press it once, boom, press it again, it'll blink. Nothing too fancy, but again, very cool that AddMotor includes that with it. So yeah, I want to take this thing for a quick test ride, show you this bike in action. I'm just going to ride around here for a minute, and then I also took some footage, some drone shots, and some other shots of this thing in slow motion to really show you guys the suspension, how this thing works. So yeah, so let's get started on that. See you in a minute. Okay, so the biggest thing I wanted to show you guys in this area of riding is just basically the acceleration and the braking. So I'm going to start by just accelerating with the throttle only right here. I'm going to crank it up to pedal assist level 5, just because why not? I am pretty low on battery. I've been riding this thing for a while, but so this is from a dead stop, and then we'll go ahead and just start accelerating here. 10 miles an hour, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So yeah, not bad. And then one other thing I wanted to show you guys real quick was a brake test on this. So we'll go ahead and accelerate again, and then we're going to do a rear brake test just to show you kind of these mechanical brakes, then we'll do a front brake test. All right, so we're at 15 miles an hour, and here goes the rear brake test. All right, not bad. And of course, this is just one-handed, guys. Of course, if you use both brakes at the same time, it'll be much better. So same thing, we'll get up to like 15 miles an hour, and we'll try the front brake. 16, 17, and here we go. Yeah, so, yeah, the brakes in this are pretty good. That's always kind of a pretty important thing for me, is the brakes. I think it's a big safety feature. I want powerful brakes. The bigger, the better. Hydraulic is great. Mechanical works fine too. So, okay, I'm gonna show you guys some shots here on a different location, and I'll see you in just a minute. This first clip is basically just so you guys can see the derailleur switching gears here. I'm just cycling through first all the way up to 7th. And then check out this scene here. This is me starting and stopping pedaling. So you can see the cadence sensor, how accurate it is, how long it takes for this to start up, how long it takes for it to shut off. And then this one right here is basically just a shot of the rear suspension. Remember, this has 22 millimeters of travel. This is basically just to give you guys an idea of how much flex or how much kind of play there is in this suspension. Remember, we have unsuspended weight, unsprung weight here in the back because of the motor here in the back wheel. And I'm basically just trying to keep my legs out of the shot here. Alright, this is for the front suspension. It's kind of hard to see when it's going full speed, so I slowed it down for you guys so you can really see just how much this front suspension is working. And again, for the Suntour XCT, this thing has 100 millimeters of travel. And for somebody like me who weighs 200 pounds, you can see I'm not doing serious jumps or anything, and even with just these little bumps, these things are almost bottoming out. So this might be an instance where it might be a good idea to increase the preload just to stiffen up these shocks just a little bit. So here's a few drone shots just to give a sense of the speed of this thing. Remember, it tops out at 20 miles per hour with the throttle or with the pedal assist. And this is just a front-on shot, just a really pretty scene. I wanted to include this so you guys could see this bike from the air as well. And even here in these shots, I'm not really pedaling that hard. The motor, 500 watts of power, it does a good job of getting me up to speed pretty quickly, especially somewhere like here where it's pretty flat ground. And getting up to speed to 20 miles per hour is really just not that difficult. And then this last shot here, I'm including this pretty much just because I like the way it looks. Alright guys, that is pretty much it for the AddMotoR HITHOT H1 review. We're going to have quite a few reviews coming out from AddMotoR here in the coming weeks, so stay tuned for that. But just in summary real quick again, this bike runs for $16.99. It does come in quite a few different kind of accent schemes. We got the blue, green, yellow, and orange. I think this is a good value buy because of the front and rear suspension. Even though the rear suspension, you've got this kind of unsprung weight here in the back because of the motor placement. Overall, this bike I think performed pretty well. I enjoyed testing it out, and I dig that it's got this control center with a fair amount of information up here. Overall, just a fun bike, good value buy, and yeah, hope you guys dug that review. If you are going out to ride safe. See you soon.